Hey guys, it's George. So I'm going to be working on the FroKnowsPhoto Raw edit of the week number 58, I believe it is. And it's kind of an interesting one today because he kind of posted a challenge about fixing images that aren't perfectly tack sharp, or maybe the focus was missed a little bit. So we'll take a look at and see what we can do. Okay, here we go. Alright, so I'm going to open it up in Photoshop, and it should open up in Camera Raw. Okay, here it is. Wow, it's really green on my screen. I don't know if it's the picture or there's a lot of green in it, but yeah, you can totally see that I don't know if she moved or if the camera just missed the focus a little bit, but you can see that this grass right here is in focus, pretty sharp focus, but her face is not. It's not so bad to where we won't be able to sharpen it and make it workable. Again, obviously, the better the shot from the camera, the better it's going to look at the end. That's, pretty much with anything. So, but you know what? He posted a challenge. Let's see what we can do. So I'm going to enable my lens profile, which I don't think I like. It's blowing everything out. I guess it's got some vignetting and stuff, but man, I'm gonna leave the lens profile out just because I don't like what it's doing. I am going to try some. See, that's kind of cool. Even though I'm going to take it into black and white, I can warm it up with the white balance adjustments here. And I'm going to go with cloudy, because that kind of warms it up. Even though I'm going to go black and white once I get into Photoshop, but I just kind of want to start with something. You know what? I want to start with something that's as close as we can to where we want to be. Alright, so I guess I'm just going to go there and I'm going to open it up in Photoshop and do it all in Photoshop because I want to work on the sharpening before I even work on the color stuff. So here we go. This seems like it's going to be a pretty quick edit actually, guys. So I'm going to hold down Shift and click on the Open Object to open it up as a smart object, so I can always go back to my Camera Raw. And it opened up on my second monitor, but here it is. Alright, so here we go. Wow, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to... I'm wondering if I should sharpen it first or if I should... I think I'm going to do a little healing first. Just minor, because once I sharpen it, I'm going to have to maybe rework it, because I'm a little worried that sharpening this image is going to bring out some of the noise that's in there. Just because when you sharpen things, it'll sharpen everything. And usually I try to stay away from sharpening the noise and stuff, but since we're trying to sharpen a picture that's not completely sharp, we might run into some issues, but we'll see when we get there. Let's start here. I'm just healing all the just a bunch of little spots that I can kind of see, just to make it. I want to start from the cleanest I can possibly start before I actually sharpen it. Alright, so I guess that looks pretty good. Unfortunately, like he said, it's not in focus, but I feel if we, how can I do this? I think I'm going to use a high pass layer. I'm going to hit Command Option Shift E, which makes composite layer. It basically takes all the layers I have below it and composites it onto another layer. And I'm going to heal them. I'm going to name my layers. This one's called Healing. This one is going to become my high pass sharpen. High pass sharpen, and I feel like I'm going to do one or two, maybe even three, so let's start with one. Okay, so then we go to, once we make our composite, we go to Filter, okay, let's see, Filter, Other, High Pass. And I'm going to start with a radius of 2.5 pixels. Seems like a decent place to start. Maybe even 2 pixels actually. Okay, let's try with 2 pixels. So once we do that, then we put this on overlay. And we see that it did sharpen and it did bring out some of that noise, which I was worried about. But, well, since I'm going to convert it to black and white, maybe we'll add some noise and make it a kind of noisy, grainy black and white. That's one way to maybe save this file, but let's see how much it sharpened it. See, it did sharpen it a little bit. If you look at her eyes in here, of course she's going to be mad because we're sharpening her little bit of wrinkles that she's got there, but we'll work that out. I'm going to duplicate that. Now it's starting to get sharper. I'm going to duplicate it one more time, but this time this one's going to be lowered to like maybe 25%. And see, now we're pretty sharp actually. Now there's enough edge detail in there where it's really sharp. Of course it sharpens everything, so what we're going to do here is I'm going to select these 3 layers and go into here and make new group from layers. And I'm going to call those layers my high pass sharpen layers. And the reason I'm making them into a group is for one thing. Basically what I want to do is holding down Option, I'm going to hit the mask icon. And when you hold down Option and hit the mask icon, it makes a mask into that folder that's completely black, so it's actually not showing up. See how it made a mask that's black right here? Well, that black mask hides everything that's in this folder. If I hold down Shift and click on the mask, it will actually delete the mask and show me what's actually happening. So, see, basically, and the reason I did that is because I don't want to sharpen the whole thing. There's a lot of beautiful bokeh back here that I don't want to sharpen. But I did want to sharpen her face and her hair and the dog's face. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a brush and change my color to white with the X key. X key switches black to white, or foreground to background is what it actually switches. So if this was red and this was blue, it would switch those two as well. And remember, always the D key. Let's say I had been playing with a red color. Oh, I can't actually. Let's say I was playing with a red color in here, right? And I hit the X key. Well, it'll switch foreground to background, like I said. But if you hit the D key, it's the default colors, which is always black for the foreground and white for the background. So now I'm switching them again with X. I'm going to delete that layer I just made. I'm going to go back to my mask. And okay, so hit the D key to default. And then X to make sure I'm painting with white. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint in that mask that I just created. I'm gonna paint white into that mask so that everything that's in that group, that folder group right there, is now going to show through, right? So the reason I'm doing that is because I want to sharpen her face and her hair without sharpening. Actually, I don't want to sharpen her body because that I want to be blurred. So I just want to sharpen her face, his face, maybe her hand a little bit, and to a certain point so that, you know, his body bokehs out. So that's kind of where I wanted to take it. As you can see, if I turn this off, it did sharpen it quite a bit, and it looks much, much better now that that's kind of sharpened out. Okay, so now I want to do... Okay, now that I did that, I do want to go in here and add a little makeup. And I call it makeup, but basically all I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be airbrushing. Oops. I'm going to call it makeup. And basically all I'm going to be doing is, with a very low flow on my brush, say 5%, I'm going to spray, that's why it's called an airbrush, because you spray some of this color onto her skin. And it works much like real makeup. If you've ever watched a makeup artist, whether it be the movie industry or models or whatever, and I don't even know if they still do this, but they used to use airbrushes. Basically paint in makeup. You know, they use regular brushes and like the makeup brushes and the foundation brushes and all that stuff. But a lot of times I noticed that they would use airbrush, like a painter's airbrush, you know, like a like a regular airbrush. And I was like, well, why can't we do that in Photoshop? And lo and behold, you can. You can basically do that in Photoshop and add a coat of makeup. And what I do is I always go too far, and then I'll bring back my opacity to show below. And then I'll make a mask, and with black, I will remove the overspray of makeup on like parts that she shouldn't have makeup. So like her eyebrows, her, you know, her hair, her eyelashes, anything that you don't think should have makeup, you just remove it from there. And now we have a makeup layer, which the reason I did a makeup layer was just to smooth out her skin a little bit. It just makes her look a little nicer. And we have the sharpening. I'm a little worried about these eyes right here. I might remove the remove the sharpness from the wrinkles just a little bit. On my mask, I'm painting in white with a very low airbrush flow. And what it's doing is it's not removing the entire mask. It's just removing part of it because it's not full flow. It's not a full opacity brush right now. So, yeah. So there. That looks a little better. It's still sharp, but not so wrinkly. And, I mean, that's a beautiful shot as it is right now, but I do want to go black and white because of the noise issues that it brings back when you see how this has some grain and some noise and stuff. And that's because we sharpened it. When you sharpen things, you know, you're going to bring out a lot of the imperfections. So next I want to convert it to black and white. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to go black and white, right there, black and white. And I like using the black and white conversion, black and white adjustment brush adjustment layer, because it lets me play with the actual colors later on. So for example, if I want to darken my reds to kind of darken it a little bit there in her face and his thing, maybe lighten the yellows to lighten the background a little bit, and the greens. So that's why I use this. So because I can always go in and it's much like the Lightroom one, does kind of the same thing, but in Photoshop. So now that's kind of cool. Now here's where I'm going to add some grain. I'm going to add some noise so that because now that I airbrush, we have spots that don't have noise and spots that do have noise. So since I'm going to be adding some noise, I'm going to make a new layer. And if you hold down the option button and hit the new layer icon, it brings up this dialog box so you can name it directly. You don't have to go back into it and name it afterwards. So I'm going to fill it with 50% gray. Now holding down the shift key while hitting delete brings up the fill dialog box. Now the fill dialog box also lets you paint with the foreground color, background color, 50% gray, and sometimes if you have a content aware layer, you can do that too. I'm just going to do 50% gray. It's going to do a completely 50% gray. And then I'm going to go to filter, noise, add noise. And for this image, I'm going to add quite a bit of noise. I think I'm going to add 10. 10 is usually a lot. I usually add somewhere in the range of 3 or 4% noise. But for this image, I want to make it a little noisy. So I'm going to add 10%. And I'm going to make that layer and put it on overlay. And you'll see that now that I come back, the noise that I added is uniform across the entire, and I added way too much. So I'm going to do that again. I'm going to hit Shift Delete, 50% gray. Basically, I refilled that layer with gray without the noise. And I'm going to go filter, and it's already on overlay, so that's why you can see through it. Noise, add noise, and let's try 6%. And let's try 5%. That's a little better. Okay, so that's not so much noise, but it does add enough noise to where it makes everything look like it belongs together. Now, let's get into some of the kind of maybe some special effects. I'm going to add a vignette. Holding down Option and hitting the new layer button brings up my new layer with vignette, letting me name it. So I'm going to do a vignette. Basically, I'm going to use the ellipse selecting tool and go from corner to corner. And that makes a selection in that oval shape. If you hit the Q keyboard, it brings up your quick mask. Okay, so now I can filter blur my quick mask. I usually blur it quite a bit, somewhere along the line. For a vignette, I'm going to blur it that much. So see now you see that the red is stuff. That's what's going to be. That's what the selection is going to become. So I'm going to hit Q again, and you'll see that it goes back to my selection. I'm going to hit Command-Shift-I to invert my selection. If I were to hit the Q button, now the middle part would be red, because red is stuff that is not selected. See, now the middle part is red, but the outside is not red. So red is not selected, regular color is selected. All right, so then I'm going to fill that with black. And see how on a layer it filled it with black? Now, I don't like vignettes like this, where it's way too vignetted. But I'm going to lower my opacity to somewhere in the realm of like 10% maybe. That's 12%. That looks pretty good. Okay, so that it just adds a little bit of darkness to the edges to bring your eyes in to the image. The next thing I want to do is I'm going to use a luminosity. I'm going to use a gradient map, a black and white lit gradient map, and put it on luminosity. And the reason I like to do this, it adds a little contrast to the image. It actually added quite a bit of contrast to the image. And it just makes it pop. And I like the way it does it. I like it better than contrast. You can also do brightness contrast. You can do brightness contrast. You can do levels. You can do curves. There's a lot of different ways of adding contrast. I like using a gradient map. So that's looking really good. I'm going to add just a couple of glows. And what I mean by glows is, you'll see, I'm going to, above my noise layer, actually my noise layer should be above that. Okay, so above my vignetting layer, no, below my vignette layer, I'm going to add a new layer called glow. And you'll see what it's going to do. I'm going to use my gradient tool over here in a circular tool. So you have like, this one does a single line. This one does a circle. So anywhere you put it, it'll make a little circle of that gradient. All right, so I'm going to select circle. I'm going to select white. And I'm going to see where the light is coming from. Like you can see light through here. I'm just going to add glows in little areas where, and then I'm going to lower that opacity. And the reason I did that is just to add a little bit of a magical sense to this picture. Since we are trying to hide a little bit of the fact that the picture was not super sharp, I'm adding a little bit, just a teeny little glow in there. And it really just kind of adds a little magical sense to this picture, I think. And I'm going to lower it to about 20%. And I'm kind of liking where that's going. Maybe even duplicate the gradient and make it really intense. I duplicated that black and white luminosity gradient map, and I'm going to lower that to 50%. And the reason I did that is because it just adds another layer of contrast to really make that image pop. And now I'm thinking my vignette could come up a little bit darker. Yeah, see, so now I'm going to make it to like maybe around there, 16%. And I'm kind of liking what that's doing. The other thing I'm a little worried about is this little patch of grass right here. And I don't know if it was maybe why there's a really light patch of grass right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new layer, and I'm going to call it Darken Grass. And I'm going to take my brush with black in a very low flow, and I'm going to make my brush holding down with the bracket, with the closed bracket makes your brush bigger, open bracket makes your brush smaller. So I'm going to make it really big, and I'm going to paint in just a little bit of black in there. You got to be careful not to make it look splotchy or anything like that. So you want to do it, you want to build it up. That's why I use airbrush in 5% flow, right? So I can build it up at my own pace instead of kind of Photoshop telling me this is, 5% or whatever. This way, and it comes from the fact that I used to paint traditionally and stuff like that, and that's kind of how I did that. And I'm liking where that's going, guys. I think that's going to be my edit. I'm trying to just find the right balance. And I kind of like that. I mean, there's a glow. It's a little bit in her face, which is kind of cool. Maybe I can even add a little bit more in her face. See, that I'm liking what that's doing. It's kind of yeah, I mean that looks good. That's it. That's what I'm gonna go with. Let me just give it a once more over everywhere. Noise looks good, grain looks good, bokeh still looks beautiful, still enough detail in the background, but I tried to make it a little less distracting. The other thing we can do, and now this is, I'm just going to get into it. I'm going to make a new layer, and this is, I'm not sure this is going to work, but this is my knocked back trees. The trees behind her are just a little dark, and they're a little distracting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint white and see if that works. Just lightening them up a little bit so that they're not so in your face and so distracting. And since there's so much light coming from that background, I think we can get away with it a little bit. You just got to be very careful not to go too far, because then it'll just look like you painted white on top of it. So you just got to be very careful, and I think that's kind of helping. Just got to be very, very careful not to go too far. See, like there, I think I went a little too far, but it's okay. And here where there's light, you can actually add more, because, you know, you can pretend that it's coming from that light and you're just adding more glows and stuff. And then you can always knock that back with opacity and with a mask if you want to do specific spots. And let's see, let's do it before and after. Yeah, see, that makes it way less distracting. It's just a huge difference that made. I'll knock back just a little bit so that it's not too heavy. But yeah, that I think helps a lot. I'm going back and forth here. Let's see. Yeah, I like that. Okay, so that's where I'm going to go with my edit, guys, and hope you enjoyed it. And comment, tell me you like it or not. Let me know if you have any questions or if you would like to see anything else. Actually, not done. I just remembered something I wanted to do. I'm going to make a new layer and call it highlight layer. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that layer on overlay, and I'm going to paint white. Now I'm moving my flow up to 100% because I want it to be, and I'm going to make a small brush and I'm going to paint white. Ooh, that's way too much. Okay, so back to 5% flow. Let me build it up like I usually do. Basically, what I want to do is I just want to enhance some of the highlights in her hair to really make her hair kind of pop. And this is just artistically, you know, you just enhance where you think it needs it or where you think you want it to be enhanced. And it just really makes her hair kind of have a little more life. See, already, let me just go back and forth. It's just a little bit of life to her hair. And I think that's where I'm going to go. I'm definitely going to stop now. And just let me know if you like it. All right? Thanks again, guys. See you next time. Bye.